Hey guys, you're watching me on House of Spooks, and today we are gonna ask people how they were impacted by listening to the news of Burari case. And before we jump on to how they reacted to it and what their perception of it is, let me just do a quick recap with you. So the Burari case was an infamous murder case where 11 people of that family killed themselves over a belief that the patriarch of the family, Mr. Lalit, would lead them through a ritual where he was told by his deceased father that he would come and rescue them and rid them of all their miseries. And in that belief, to be ridden of their miseries, they all performed this ritual and ended up killing themselves. So let's just go ahead and ask people what they think of this case.
Hi, the question is, what do you think about the Burari case?
I think it was very terrifying. I mean, thinking about 11 people who hung themselves in 3 generations, killing themselves on a mere belief. It was very scary. I mean, it was something which I think would really, I couldn't sleep after, knowing about the story, and especially after watching the documentary. So it was very chilling.
Can you tell us what was your first reaction if you remember?
My reaction was obviously, I thought that it's probably has to do something with, belief system or something. And it was pretty much more complex. I kind of had this reaction where I felt that the society needs to address the psychological and mental disorders in that matter, so that it's more aware about these issues.
So it was very disturbing, to say the least, and it kind of reinstates how people are willing to go up and beyond when they have certain superstitious beliefs, So it just shows us how we stand as a society, educated people hanging themselves just because they had a superstition. I would only call it a superstition, even if it is a mystery today, but it was a superstition, I believe it was. And people hanging themselves, killing themselves, voluntarily killing themselves. It was very, very disturbing, to say the least.
Can you tell us about your first reaction if you remember?
Yeah, I don't watch a lot of graphic content, so my sister showed that documentary to me, so I was very disturbed, and I kept on thinking about like what went through those people's minds, what were they thinking, how manipulative can a person be to make you kill yourself, to think that you'll reincarnate. It was very disturbing, very disturbing.
Yes, when I watched the documentary, initially me and my sister were watching, and our minds were fucked when we saw the scene, and when they were relating those 11 holes with those 11 hanging bodies. So I think more than the religious influence, it's obviously the superstition comes from the religious influence. So I think how this particular case tells us how superstition can turn lives upside down. And also like itna upside down that at the end people are hanging themselves, and they are like volunteering themselves to death. So it was quite horrifying. Yeah.
So when I heard about the Burari case, it was quite shocking. Not quite shocking, it was very much of shocking. Like 11 people hung themselves just because a soul kind of thing told them to hang themselves. It was very shocking, and I didn't know how to react to it. But when I read whole about it, the thing that he went out to grab some food and then come home and then tell their the family members to hang themselves, and the grandfather will come and save themselves. It was all bullshit to me. It didn't make any sense to me. It was kind of very shocking and very terrifying as well. Like what kind of mental health he was suffering from, and the case was never solved actually. And there were small children who were hung themselves. Like I don't know what was the mental state of kind, and I probably don't want to talk anymore about it, but yeah, it was a very terrifying case.
So I watched it alone while I was alone at home, and I watched it up until 5 o'clock in the morning, which was literally like super spooky. After that, I had multiple nightmares. In one of the nightmares, I saw my father hung himself, which was like the worst. And yeah, like everywhere around, especially the structure that I was in, was a dark space, right? So whenever I would come to Jamia or anywhere nearby, I would just keep imagining there could be any life living in that space. You never know. Obviously, it came out of a remote area in Delhi. So yeah, it was very like it did have an impact on me that lasted, and I had to get rid of it. I had to start watching something more entertaining. So I kept going back to Friends. I kept watching Friends to get over it. So it took a while. It was very scarring.
इससे इसके बारे में मुझे पता चला डॉक्यूमेंट्री से. आई थिंक द नेम वाज सम फाइल्स आई गेस बाय नेटफ्लिक्स, है ना. सो इट वाज वेरी हॉरिबल एंड after seeing that I think that we all should focus on mental health, because somehow it is related to that. The person, the main person in the family, he was suffering from some mental disorder. I think this is something that that led to that horrible situation. So I think we all should focus on mental health.
The case highlighted what is the lack of awareness around mental health in India, and what was happening to the man in the documentary as well as in the real case was that it was a very clear case of psychosis and maybe schizophrenia and other such mental health disorders, but they failed to recognize that, and the family sort of played along his own tale that he was seeing people and that they should commit this ritual together, and eventually we saw that around 11 people lost their lives. So I think if there was greater awareness around mental health in India, then we wouldn't have seen the deaths of so many people.
And what was your first reaction?
My first reaction was obviously shock, but then I came to I sort of made peace with it, because I was like, okay, this is what India really is, because we have a lot of conservative attitudes and a lot of orthodox beliefs in India. So it is understandable why they sort of didn't take that guy to a psychologist or a psychiatrist, but instead just played along with him.
I've only got to know about it through OTT, and when I saw about it, it was definitely creepy. Obviously, जब आप खुद सोचो कि एक फैमिली में पूरा फैमिली जस्ट एक बिलीफ से लेजिट ख़त्म हो गई. सो दैट इन इट सेल्फ इज़ वेरी क्रीपी. एंड नाउ फिर अलग अलग जो भी उनके इन्वेस्टिगेशन में दे गॉट थ्रू 11 होल्ड एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट, सो कि उनके सोल्स वगैरह जाए. व्हेन वी थिंक ऑफ इट राइट नाउ वी फील इट्स क्रीपी, बट एक्चुअल में पीपल डू बिलीव लाइक दे हैव देयर ओन सुपरस्टिशन की and their own ways of maybe dealing with grief, क्योंकि उनका फैमिली मेम्बर एक जा चुका था. सो ऑल दी अटेम्प्ट वॉज टू गो बैक एंड कि बाबा बचा लेंगे या अम्मा बचा लेंगे, कि हम लोग अगर उनके पास जाएंगे. सो दैट होल बिलीफ सिस्टम और द वे ऑफ डीलिंग विद ग्रीफ वॉज इवेंचुअली दैट लेड ऑल ऑफ द फैमिली टूवर्ड्स दैट पिट होल जो उन्होंने किया. सो या वेरी क्रीपी टू थिंक अबाउट दैट.
What was your first reaction?
माई फर्स्ट रिएक्शन वॉज डेफिनेटली डिस्टर्ब्ड. 3-4 दिन तक मैंने जब 2 एपिसोड्स देख लिए, 3rd एपिसोड तक आई नेवर वेंट 3-4 दिन तक. देन आफ्टर दैट आई वेंट एंड सॉ इट. सो हाँ, इनिशियली बहुत डिस्टर्बिंग था कि क्योंकि किसी का फैमिली इज़ अ वेरी क्लोज इंटीग्रल थिंग दैट यू थिंक अबाउट. सो डिस्टर्बिंग था.
So it was a very brutal case जो मैंने पहले सुन के it was shocking कि how a full family kind of at same time, irrespective of what age they are, from the oldest to the youngest, they all hang themselves, and it was difficult to believe कि they hang themselves. But with the documentary sort of which came later, the story, when we understood, I was just appalled, and my first reaction was like, either it is a murder attempt, or it is something which is kind of done by someone else, or this is like maybe something which has no rational, because like 12 people or 13 people together killing themselves seems very illogical. And when we understand, like when we get to know how it happened, that's the worst part, like how blind faith can turn into, like blind faith can kill yourself. Like it's beyond imagination.